help women, save lives, and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. We had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello and welcome to the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. If you saw part one of this two-part series with Jim Olson, welcome back. We're going to do part two today, talk a little 40 Days for Life. If you have not seen that part with former CIA spy Jim Olson, who's also the founding chairman of the board of 40 Days for Life, that's really what he's known for, is being part of 40 Days for Life, then go back and watch that first episode where we talk about current events with him, his career, the morality of spying, a lot of great stuff in that podcast and interesting stuff. Be sure also, I may regret saying this, to leave your comments at the bottom of the YouTube page, whether they are critical, which are more helpful to us, or positive, which we appreciate as well. So be sure to do that. And I'm going to reintroduce my good friend Jim Olson to the podcast. For those of you who don't know, he received his law degree from the University of Iowa. He recently retired from the Bush School of Government at Texas A&M, hence 40 Days for Life started in College Station. He was teaching at the Bush School, classes on intelligence. He was recruiting future spies and recruiting people to go into different areas of service throughout our country and different agencies. He served for over 30 years in the CIA, mainly overseas as a spy. He was chief of counterintelligence at the CIA. As a spy, he served in Moscow, Vienna, Paris, and Mexico City. And he also has written two great books, which we touched on one of them in the last episode, Fair Play, The Moral Dilemmas of Spying, and To Catch a Spy, The Art of Counterintelligence. And so prior to his career in the CIA, I think when he got picked up by them, he served in the U.S. Navy and made rank of lieutenant commander. So, Jim, welcome back to the podcast.
Good to see you again.
We're wearing you out today. Yeah. So, okay, so the other thing, you do need to go back and listen to that first podcast because we discuss spy novels and spy movies, but we need to transition out of that. I forgot to mention this. You are a huge sports fan.
I'm a big sports fan. I love Aggie sports.
Yes?
I love professional baseball, football, all sports.
You're a Yankees fan also.
You can bring that up.
I was going to bring that up.
It's going to alienate that with most of your audience probably.
I've criticized you a lot for that. This is a flaw. But you actually have a good excuse, which is you're from Iowa and you just got to kind of pick a team.
When I was growing up in Iowa, we didn't have any baseball out there. And so the Yankees in those years kind of epitomized excellence, I thought. And it was an exciting time. Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, Whitey Ford, all those.
But they're the evil empire, and you spent your life fighting evil empires. So that was your exception? That was your exception of the rule?
Well, I thought American exceptionalism was
personified that's
by
the angle.
The Yankees' exceptionalism. Does that work?
I'll take that. I'll take that. I actually have a funny story that happened to me outside of your office. So we're going to get into why you became the founding board chair and how funny David B. Wright and I were like dying that you would be our board chair. And we were on the phone. I remember talking to him. We both said, I think at the same time, he'll never do it. So it shows how wrong we were. But so I would run over to your office a lot because these are the early days of 40 Days for Life. I mean, I'm running and checking the mailbox. We're incorporating it Chris Smitherman's office. We're doing all these just legal things, right? And you approved my expenses. So I would run over to the Bush School. You're in there talking to a student. They leave. But I was always in line. So people thought I was a student. So it's just got this on, even though I graduated and considered myself an adult, had 2 or 3 kids at that point, right? And this guy was standing next to me, and he was trying to be all mysterious because I guess we were outside Jim Olson's office, and he said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "I just need a reimbursement," just kind of mess with him. And he said, "Have you ever met Professor Olson?" And I said, "A couple of times." Yeah. And he said, "Well, has he asked you to join the CIA yet? Are you going to become a spy?" And I said, "Well, we haven't gotten that far in our relationship yet." So I'd known you years at that point, but so then he said, "What are you doing here?" Yeah. I said, "Well, Jim serves on the board of a pro-life organization, and I work there, and I need to get this stuff approved." And he looked at me and he said, "I don't believe that for a second." So it's just,
I wouldn't either. It sounds really fishy.
I told it did sound fishy, but it was the exact truth. So it just shows you never know. Okay, so let's back up. If you watch that first one, we know the drama, the danger that you lived in. But in your life, pre-CIA, post-CIA, when did you first hear about the concept of an abortion?
I'm very aware of the day that the Roe v. Wade decision came through.
Okay.
I remember having a discussion with my brother at that time about what the implications would be. We didn't predict how horrible it would actually turn out to be.
Were you overseas when they...
No, we were in the United States then.
Okay.
And my brother is an atheist, and he took the different point of view. He took the view that it was not human life that we were talking about here, an embryo, and I just couldn't accept that. It was so obvious to me. It's a matter of faith, but also just as a matter of science. We're talking about a human life there. And so I was very aware of it from the beginning.
Were you raised Catholic?
I was raised Catholic. Faith has always been a very important part of my life. And then that was really an important factor in our marriage. Meredith is a good, strong Catholic woman. So we have always been very committed to our faith. It's really sustained us in our career, because overseas there was some danger, in fact, a lot of danger. There were some dangerous moments. There were some operations when it wasn't 100% guaranteed I'd come back. But it was my faith that really gave me the courage to do what I did. I could not have done it. And Meredith says the same thing. We could not have done what we did. We could not have lived that life without our faith. Literally, Sean, when I was out there in the dark streets of some foreign capital, and the danger was palpable, I had this physical feeling, very palpable, that I was not alone, that he was there. I could feel his protective presence. I can't tell you how reinforcing that was, how much strength that gave me, how much confidence. I could not have done what I did without that.
During that time of your career, was that typical of the demographic of a spy, that you were the cause of good, you were Christian? Yeah. Were there atheists? Were there, was it people that thought they were fighting good versus evil?
Yeah, we didn't keep those statistics, but just anecdotally, Meredith and I were surprised by how faith-filled the organization was.
That's interesting. So
I think they go together.
Did they know or care that you were Catholic? Was that a factor?
I don't think it was a factor, but we were surrounded by a lot of other Catholics.
Okay.
And other Christians.
Okay.
And I think they go together. I think love of God and love of country are compatible.
Right.
And we certainly saw that at the CIA. We had Bible studies. We had cleared priests and ministers and rabbis who would come into CIA headquarters and who provided, we had religious services right there at CI headquarters. We were probably violating some federal law.
Oh yeah, now that you'd get canceled. You snuck the priest in.
But hey, we're the CIA. Who's going to know? You know.
How do you know he's a real priest?
But to go to confession to a priest who is cleared is
Wow.
it's just kind of comforting to know.
Let's talk about confession and mass. When you're at your most dangerous moments, which we covered in that first part, you're in Moscow. There's no private conversations between you and Meredith.
None at all.
Everything is being
Except
recorded.
in this one suspended room inside the embassy, which was protected.
How did you do that in marriage? I mean, and y'all, how long have you been married now?
51 years.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Congratulations. How many grandkids?
11.
Okay, the Olson clan is growing.
Yeah, we've been blessed.
That's tough. You can't talk to when you do talk to your wife, it's through code.
Yeah, and gestures, you get used to it. It takes a lot of discipline.
Okay.
Before you go to an assignment like Moscow, which is going to be oppressive, it's going to be high stress, you have to go through another round of psychological assessment. Each of you individually. I did, Meredith did, and then together. Because the CIA psychologists and psychiatrists wanted to assure themselves and the organization that we could withstand that kind of high anxiety, that we each individually could live that way, and that our marriage could survive that lack of real communication.
So the CIA had concern about
Of
you
course,
staying married.
Because we know.
Yeah.
We know what it's like.
Yeah.
A lot of people can't do it. It's not easy. But Meredith and I so believed in what we were doing. And frankly, for us in the CIA to go to Moscow, that's like joining the New York Yankees.
We're back to and going to the World Series.
And going to the World Series.
I was going to use...
It's the ultimate in our profession.
I was going to use like the Celtics or the 90s Bulls or something,
I
going
like
to the
the Celtics
finals.
too.
But
I can tell you that stealing Russia's secrets on their turf, under their noses, and not getting caught was about as good as it got.
okay.
And we loved it.
Okay.
But our faith was present even in a place like Moscow because the stresses there really made that important for us.
How did you go to Mass?
The way it worked in Moscow was that the U.S. Embassy and the French Embassy went together
Okay.
and hired a French-Canadian priest who was bilingual. And we brought him out to Moscow, and we gave him diplomatic status. We accredited him with the Russian government as an attaché to protect him, because it would have been illegal for him to do any kind of services or proselytizing outside the embassy.
Okay.
So he, inside the embassy of the U.S. government or inside the embassy of the French government, was protected. He could provide services and support to those communities. The only place in the U.S. Embassy in Moscow that was large enough for Sunday Mass was the cafeteria.
Okay.
So inevitably, that became known as Our Lady of the Snack Bar.
Our Lady of the Snack Bar was your parish.
That was our parish.
That was your parish. Okay. Many good memories, I'm sure.
And he provided our children. One of our sons was confirmed there.
Okay. So he could hear confessions. He could say Mass.
Confessions, no,
Because you're bugged.
because there's no place that's not bugged. Some people would risk having a walking confession outside in the courtyard, but that was folly because the KGB had parabolic antennas that could zoom in on those conversations.
You got to be careful saying that's folly. They were seeking the mercy of Christ. You're gonna get some.
Well, we certainly didn't want them to be listening to our confession.
It could have been reckless. Yeah. Well, it's just their personal sins. Hopefully, it wasn't national intelligence. Yeah.
Anyway, it was you're away from all the beautiful things that you have in the United States around your faith, but you had enough to keep it alive.
So let me, because Mary Lisa and I we consider y'all mentors. We've known y'all for so long, but we've known you here in the comfort of Texas and your job now. How was that transition of you? You're at the height. The World Series is a good analogy. Like, this is it. When you were recruited in that hotel, it's game 7 and you're the starting pitcher. So all these difficulties, I'm sure, are kind of overwhelmed by this is Normandy. Yes. Okay. So then you move back to Texas, you have a normal parish. We have great Mexican food and barbecue. You ride your bike around the neighborhood. There's no threat. How did your marriage transition? Was it a letdown? Did you miss the drama? Or was it, maybe let's just go to dinner tonight and have a little bit of a life?
It was traumatic. Coming out from undercover, which we had to do to come to Texas A&M University. CIA does not allow its officers to be on college campuses covertly. And besides, if I'm going to come down here and set up an intelligence studies program, I've got to acknowledge I have a little bit of background.
I think so.
Coming out from undercover was something Meredith and I had never wanted to do. Like most of our colleagues, we wanted to just kind of slip away and never have to reveal the fact that we've been living a double life.
You just retire as an engineer or whatever?
Yeah, that's right. You'd have a pretty inconsistent resume to market looking for another career if you wanted another career. But that's easier because coming out from undercover has its consequences. Mm-hmm. You're going to be limited on foreign travel because when you come out from undercover, you are announcing to the whole world, hey, when we were in your country, guess what we were doing?
Yeah.
We were committing crimes. We were doing espionage against your country. They don't like that. So we can't.
So you don't vacation in Russia these days?
I don't go to Russia.
I wouldn't think
It's kind of funny because one of my students said to me not too long ago, he said, Mr. Olson, I bet you'd really like to go back to Russia to see how it's changed since you were there in the CIA. Oh, no, they probably wouldn't let you in. I said, well, they'd let me in.
They may not let you out.
They're not going to let me out because...
Do you go to Europe?
I don't. I haven't left the United States. Now, Meredith has ventured out a few places because I think it's a little bit safer for her, but I just wouldn't be comfortable.
Yeah. But that's a hard transition.
Yeah. We did, Sean, I take that back. We did get approval once to go to Ireland. And I'm half Irish.
Yeah.
And I'd never been to Ireland before. To the best of our knowledge, we didn't ever do anything against the Irish.
Nobody does. Everybody loves the Irish.
We love the Irish, and frankly, they don't have any secrets worth stealing.
it's just how do they get all the smoke out of the Jameson whiskey? Yeah, no, it's nothing too.
We had a wonderful time there, but that's been it for me. But that's a small price to pay because we've seen the world.
Yeah,
and there are wonderful things to see and do in this country.
What?
The other consequence, let me just touch on that, is your personal safety. Because when you come off from undercover, you in effect are announcing to the bad guys that you're here in College Station. Mm-hmm. And, if you're a terrorist or if you're a narcotics trafficker, if you're an organized crime figure and you want to strike back against the CIA, that's hard to do because we're invisible. We're inaccessible. But if you've got a couple people walking around in College Station, Texas, admitting they were in the CIA, you potentially could become a target. And I don't want to over-dramatize it.
Sure.
But there have been incidents here. There was one going on just 2 weeks ago here because a lot of people hate the CIA. There are a lot of crazy people.
Yeah, because you have that part of it, the bad guys, but you also have the crazy fringe Americans who want to get rid of the CIA or anti-government in general.
People who think that we're controlling their lives,
yeah.
We're responsible for their problems. A lot of sick people, but there's some terrorist activists who are around this part of the country also. And Mexico's not that far away. We served in Mexico. The traffickers know who we are. So Meredith and I are aware of that. I
have to say, though, for the viewer, it hasn't impacted you at all. I mean, Meredith is part of every church group known to man, every pro-life group. Yeah, you're part of every,
we move around, but, I have concealed carry.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea.
I think so, too. I feel a little bit better than that. But that's fine. So, yeah, coming out was hard. And then you have to have that conversation with your parents. Hey, Mom and Dad, we've been lying to you for 31 years. I hope that's okay.
Well, we mentioned in the last one, your father-in-law's relieved. He thought you were a loser.
He was
couldn't
relieved,
keep a job. Yeah.
The parents
Yeah.
took it well. The parents took it well. You know what they said independently, both sets of parents, mine and Meredith? Thank you for not telling us sooner.
Oh.
They said,
that's-
when you were all those foreign countries, we would not have wanted to know you were in the CIA. You have to worry about what it was that you were actually doing.
Yeah, and that could have gone the other way. That could have gone, you lied to us. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we, on the podcast, we've had Colonel John Ewell, who you met at the 40 Days for Life dinner
Yes.
last year. He's a POW,
Yes.
a good, close friend of mine,
Right.
my best friend's grandpa,
Yeah.
my other grandpa, as we call him. And he's been on the podcast, and one of those powerful things we've ever heard, he found out that abortion was legalized. He was a POW in Vietnam on January 22nd, 1973, when the Supreme Court gave us this garbage. You said you were here. Did you think you would ever see the overturning of Roe in your lifetime?
No, I never did. It seems so ingrained in the politics of our country. I thought that the forces behind the abortion movement had gotten so much strength. I thought they were indoctrinating our young people, particularly young women, into thinking that was some kind of a right, some kind of thing that was essential for women to have. Sick, totally twisted, but it seemed to be gaining force. So I was not, frankly, very optimistic that we would ever be able to see an abortion-free country or even an abortion-free state.
Yeah, we're in now. One of the things Colonel Ewell said, and I want to ask you, is the great just heartbreak of serving this country that you love and seeing it embrace abortion and the cultural crisis, and just being like, well, this is what we're fighting for, and we're throwing it away.
It was devastating. It was devastating. Meredith and I saw a lot of evil. We were face to face with evil, communist evil, and that was terrible, vicious, cruel. But the moral evil of our country today is abortion, because it is the slaughter of innocent people. It is a horrible, horrible thing.
And we've never done it before. We've never on this scale. So the world crashes down on genocide. We all lined up to kill Hitler.
Right.
And we look at those atrocities. We look at the Jewish Holocaust. We can look at slavery. We look at the Aztecs.
Right.
But we've never done this on a scale where 96% of the governments in the world embrace this and fund it, and we do it to ourselves. The new number that just came out is 78 million abortions globally. You can't fathom that. I think most people, and this is one of the difficult things when you're teaching our kids about the Holocaust or whatever, let's say 9 million people are murdered by Adolf Hitler, and that's so large. Yes. You don't know 9 million people, and you never will. And that's the difference between saying 9 million people were killed or 227 people died on a plane. That's just, or a school shooting like we keep having. It's so much more personal. 78 million, you just can't fathom that. It sounds made up.
You can't.
And it is that's why I think 40 Days for Life is so important, but just the pointing back to the dignity of the human person, because we, meaning mankind, has never done this on the scale that we've done it.
I agree. It's an abomination. It's Satan at work. I can't imagine that America would accept something like that.
Yeah.
And that it would be so fiercely fought for by the other side. It's a frenzy. Since Roe v. Wade, they pulled out all the stuff. They're becoming unhinged.
So let me ask you, maybe your background will help. I like all that. I like when they lose their mind because they weren't ready for the overturning of Roe. We've said that. We hit the ground running. They have overlooked us, meaning the grassroots, the pregnancy centers, the 40 Days for Life. We have reports. We work closely with the DOJ. We'll get into the DOJ a little bit. But, we've worked with the FBI. We worked with the DOJ for years under Bush, under Obama, under Trump. And even I would say the first 18 months of Biden, and then Roe's overturned, and all of a sudden our volunteers are getting their houses raided and all this. But we have a lot of friends and great people in the DOJ and the FBI, and we've got reports of Planned Parenthood executives sitting down with the FBI saying, "Get rid of these people," and it's all 40 Days for Life. And so they want to ban free speech, but that's a good sign. They're having to be reactionary. How many times have we had disappointing presidents or judicial nominees or whatever? We're just always just taking it on the chin at the federal level, and then somehow, through God's great sense of humor, Donald Trump gives us these triplets. They overturn Roe, and the other side's having to, for the first time, articulate or give good reason for their position. And they are ill-equipped. They were spoiled with the blanket of Roe.
That's right.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful. It's going to be the great legacy of Donald Trump.
Yes, no doubt.
And it's going to be a lasting legacy because they're younger.
Yeah.
Those justices who are pro-life, who are responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade, are on the younger side. I mean, Clarence Thomas is a little bit older, but we've got good years ahead of us, I think.
Absolutely. We have a great court. We're suing Westchester, New York right now in a case that we feel we will win, and that will end all buffer zones in America for once for all.
Sean, I can't miss the opportunity to thank you and 40 Days for Life, because you have been the standard bearer for the movement. And there's no organization in the country that's been more effective and had a stronger voice for life than 40 Days for Life.
Well, you saw that before anybody. And when I joke about we thought we maybe could get you on the board. There's no way we'd get you to be the board chair. And I remember you brought up, you immediately raised your hand and said, I want to be the first chairman of the board. And you were for really the first 8 years.
Yes.
When we had all this growth.
I remember. It was a shoestring operation.
It was a joke. It was fun, though.
It was a lot of fun. We couldn't meet payroll.
No, there was a lot of we couldn't meet.
And I remember, and we were finding our way, organizationally.
Yeah.
We had a couple of Texas A&M students who showed up, and they showed some leadership potential. We thought they might have a future. We knew from the beginning, Sean, you were good. Mary Lisa's even better.
Yeah, no, I remember you saying, I was really impressed with Mary Lisa. I wasn't so sure about Sean. And there's a lot of people that hold that opinion today. Trust me.
That's not true anymore because you're such a powerful team. But your leadership of the organization has just been very inspiring for all of us. And to realize that Meredith and I had even a small part of that at the beginning.
Big part, yeah.
Is one of the most gratifying things in our lives, frankly.
I remember you being concerned about something, and I wasn't, because I was young and naive. And you said, I want to be chairman of the board. I don't want my background. I don't want all the CIA stuff to be a distraction.
Yes.
I have a lot to offer, but if you and David feel, that's a distraction, we didn't. But then I remember, we doubled year to year in our number of cities. We started getting on the radar. And Robert brought 40 Days for Life to England.
Yes.
And we bash The Guardian a lot on this podcast because they deserve it. Yeah. But to their credit, they did their homework. And that was the first time. Okay, you made it 5 years. Okay.
Before I was outed.
Before you were outed. And they said, and this is the shady CIA spy board member who's corrupting, all these cities where 40 Days for Life. Yeah. But you couldn't, they had to attack you because 40 Days for Life was the prayer, the fasting, and the vigil. So they thought, no, somehow this is a CIA operation. And so shout out to The Guardian for actually doing their homework. But It
Well, there
wasn't
are
a problem.
elements of the pro-life movement that have had to use some tactics that I think are not totally foreign to what we did, because we're facing an adversary which throws everything they have against us.
Yeah.
And so we had to sometimes do some things that to protect our own equities.
Well, and I think about that the first really 6, 7, 8 years of 40 Days for Life, and we had a huge luxury that is gone, which is that we were under the radar, or people underestimated the power of a campaign going somewhere. And all that's gone mainly because Planned Parenthood has exposed us, and the former workers who have converted and have blown the whistle. The current executives, we get a lot of Planned Parenthood. We just had a CEO of Planned Parenthood in Northern California say they're killing our bottom line. Our no-show rate is at 50% for abortion appointments. And when they didn't say all that 10 years ago, they wouldn't have given us the attention or the credibility, but they're so angry now. And I think that exposure of just being more public, it works both ways. You know, in 2015, that lunatic who was not associated with us went into Colorado Springs and shot up the place. And I remember the Washington Post running an article saying, this is, you know, in the article they mentioned, we know this is not 40 Days for Life because they have a long history of peaceful activism. That goes a long way. And it as you know, it took a while to establish that, to run around, to say we're peaceful, to say we're prayerful, we're nonviolent. And it's really paid off. But
It's an unbelievable story, isn't it?
it's a beautiful story.
It started here, right here in College Station, Texas. Mm-hmm. And now it's worldwide.
Right outside this building.
I travel a lot, Sean, and it's just so heartwarming going through some small town out in Oklahoma, outside a parish, see a 40 Days for Life sign.
Yeah.
Or in a yard, somebody has a 40 Days for Life sign. It is everywhere.
I think, too, I remember you saying people want this at one of our first meetings. People are going, because you think, we're going to get 20 cities, 25 cities, and you said people are starving to do something about abortion where they live. But, you know, we talked about all the evil you faced in your career, how horrible our culture is. We've taken a baseball bat to the family in this country the last 50 years. And 40 Days for Life is good news in a time when people want good news. And I think that practical part of it, that it's positive and that you can do something and that it's not dependent on politicians, it's dependent on you and your faith and God, is just refreshing.
It was the brilliance of the concept. I give you a lot of credit for that, because there was a hunger out there for good people around the country who were inclined to be pro-life, who were open to the idea of doing something, but they didn't have a vehicle. They didn't have an organization, didn't have an umbrella to get involved, to do the prayer vigils. And 40 Days for Life gave them that. It gave them the training, it gave them the materials, it gave them the hope, and it just caught fire, didn't it?
It did. It did catch fire, and that's one of the reasons. It's so overdue having you on the podcast, but you know, a lot of our local leaders will see this. A lot of our volunteers will see this, and I want them to sort of meet you through this podcast because you're so responsible in many ways for getting this out there. But what do you say to people? Because you in that last podcast talked about 1985, your worst year, your low points, which were many where you lost friends or colleagues or there were real tragedies. Talk a little bit about fortitude. Like, we look around at our culture, somebody who goes out and prays, or somebody who's overcoming a past abortion, or somebody who's leading a campaign and getting burned out. How do we keep going when you have all this garbage going on in the news?
I have a sign on my desk at the Bush School. It's facing out. So when students or others come to my office and sit down, it's staring them in the face. And that sign, which I had made, says, eschew cynicism. And that's the message I wanted to give these future public servants. It's a message I'd like to give everybody in the pro-life movement also. Because it's very easy to become cynical, to become disillusioned, to feel that you're losing, that it's pointless, that the forces against you are winning. And if you become cynical, if you lose hope, if you lose your idealism, you've lost everything. You're never going to be effective again. So that's my message to the students. When you see government up close and personal, you're going to see things. You're going to see things in the pro-life movement. You're going to see things in our country that are going to depress you, frankly. You're going to see politics. You're going to see careerism. You're going to see dishonesty. You're going to see corruption. You're going to see illegality. And if you let that get to you, if you let that destroy your idealism, if you become cynical, then you've lost it. You've lost it. You can't let that happen. You got to stay focused on your vision, on your mission. And when you do that, that will carry you over. And that will give meaning to what you're doing. It'll give you the strength to carry on despite the disappointments.
And there's always something around the corner that reminds you of why you got into this. In the last podcast we just did with you, I would have never thought about this. And I've never heard you talk about it in all our years of knowing each other, but you actually getting one of these Russians that's selling out their countries and getting the opportunity to send them to the United States and fulfill their dream. I mean,
that's right.
It's just the best.
It is the best. In any field, and in the pro-life movement also, you have these little success stories. You have these little vignettes. They just bring joy to your life, of lives that have changed, of babies that have been saved. And I've got success stories in my career, too, of Russians that we were able to get out, of intelligence we were able to deliver to the president that saved American lives, to other fine people that we've been able to support secretly around the world. It gives a real purpose and satisfaction, fulfillment. I can't imagine being in a career where you didn't go home at night and say, we made a difference today. Mm-hmm. We had some successes. Mm-hmm. We changed some lives.
Yeah. We had a physician here who would participate in 40 Days for Life and come out and pray. And he mentioned to me one time, this is the only thing you can really do in our society where an everyday person, no matter what career you're in, you can save a life. He said, I'm a doctor, and I forget what field he was in. He said, I'll probably really never save anyone's life directly. A trauma surgeon does it every day, and cardiovascular surgeons do it every day. But most people will never save a life or have the opportunity to do so. And many people would. They would push the car over the train track to save the mom. They would sacrifice. But they're never put in a position to do it. And with 40 Days for Life, you're putting yourself in the position where somebody could be. I just got a text from a leader in California. This little boy, Sebastian, turned 13. Mm-hmm. He was saved 13 years ago at the 40 Days for Life campaign. And just that's, I think, what attracts people. But there's another side of it, which you've talked about in your own career and even with America. There's the, am I my brother's keeper? Do I have the luxury of not speaking on behalf of the unborn? And I don't think we have that luxury. I think it requires our discomfort. I think we're culpable for sure. But there's sin. And there's the sin of omission. Sin of omission obviously gets kind of looked over in our culture. But what we didn't do, what we didn't say. And I think a lot of people feel the moral obligation that I am my brother's keeper. The mom may not turn around, but I'm going to give her the chance to.
I felt that out in Iowa. The Cold War was very, very much on our minds. And even as a young man, I felt I've got to do something. I can't just be a lawyer in a small town in Iowa. I've got to serve somehow. It took me into the Navy initially, but it took me into the CIA later. And it's indescribable, that feeling you have that you have dedicated yourself something you believe in and making a difference. And when communism fell in 1989 and when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, that was our overturning of Roe v. Wade. We thought we'd never see it.
So you really never thought you would. You were just.
I never thought I'd see the end of communism. I never thought I'd see the end of the Soviet Union.
Wow.
It seemed one of those constants. I never thought I'd see the end of abortion in this country. But God is good. And Meredith keeps reminding me, as people of faith, we know we will win.
Yeah.
And we're winning now.
And we talked a lot about it on the podcast. We have to have a disposition of victory. We have to know how to win. We have to own it. And, there were some people, and they're still out there, in our beautiful movement who are like, I don't know if overturning Roe was good. Now they're reacting with that. Let them react. Because I'll take all the new problems in a post-Roe America. I'll take the insane RV abortions, which we're prepared for, all the CVS Walgreens nonsense, even the persecution that we're getting now from our government. I'll take all that. Because it means that we're winning, and they can't get rid of 40 Days for Life unless they get rid of free speech. They're trying to do that, but we're fighting them on that front. But we have to know how to win after 49 years of legal abortion. So it's a great time. We're going to have abortion-free states like we have in Texas. We'll have abortion-free regions.
But the fight's not over.
Not even close.
The need for 40 Days for Life, I think, is as strong now, maybe even stronger than it was before.
And the demand went
We've
up.
had our victory. But now we've got to consolidate that victory. And the forces of evil are attacking us. I just read this morning about how different organizations in Texas are rallying, and they're putting resources into providing transportation and hospital or lodging and hotels for women who want to leave the state to get an abortion. So they're frantic.
Yeah.
They're doing everything they can, but that's a good sign.
No, we
And
have...
it's not working to the extent that they would hope, because I was just thinking this morning, and we had a discussion with Meredith over breakfast, how many lives of Texans have been saved already?
It's 100,000.
100,000.
It's 100,000. That's the conservative estimate since the
God
heartbeat
be
bill.
praised. My gosh.
But you know what that means?
What?
And all these stupid woke CEOs don't realize it. Women don't grow up wanting an abortion. They're not traveling, and they're building. I mean, New Mexico. We see it in Colorado.
Right.
They're overbuilding.
Yes.
The travel distance is a deterrent for abortion. We know that from just the Obama years. Yeah. So distance is a deterrent in this idea that it has become a sacrament for people, that women are some kind of robot that are just programmed, that they're dying to have an abortion. So these CEOs, they're not going to pay for their travel to their kid's leukemia appointment, at MD Anderson. They won't pay for that. They'll pay for their abortion. Yeah. And, you and your wonderful wife know this is a crisis of the heart. Mm-hmm. And no woman grows up wanting an abortion, and they're broken. And they tell an average of one person before they do it. You think they're going to go into their HR director? No. You think they're going to go to their boss? No. Money's not the problem. You'll find the money. Yeah. We'd find money to get us out of any situation. So,
and that pause, that obstacle, is a good thing, because it's going to allow them to reflect on the enormity of what that decision would entail. So there's going to be a lot of gain from that. People are going to reconsider the morality, the sinfulness of what they had in mind.
Yeah, that has reached the top too. Alito's opinion, they didn't overturn Roe. I mean, they beat it with a baseball bat. It's pretty, and they go into the statistics. They go into what we've said for a long time, which is this puts us in a category with North Korea, China, and Vietnam for abortion laws. Like, we're not, and when you have people like Bill Maher saying he didn't realize most people in the pro-life movement were women. He didn't realize that Western Europe would be the most conservative pro-life state in the United States if they were admitted. And I remember him saying, abortion is different, and people don't realize that. That, when you have somebody like him saying that, that's a cultural shift, because we're losing our minds on all these other fronts. But we haven't been able to sleep at night with abortion. And we can sleep at night with a lot of stuff. We redefine marriage somehow. But we haven't been able to sleep at night with abortion. And we've had this schizophrenic relationship with the unborn child, that we love them to death, we'll spoil them more than any other country in the world? Or
Well, we're moving in the right direction. And how many abortion-free states do you say we have now?
Well, now you have essentially about 16. But that's, if you count some of the laws, it's about 20. Right. But I think we'll go up to as high as 28 over time. What we've told people and what you can see, it's going to get worse before it gets better. They're going to get crazier. But I think they're going to do what they've done over their history as a movement, which is get distracted. And Planned Parenthood has huge mission drift right now. And over time, as we get further away from Dobbs, that helps us. And they'll get lazy and they'll get distracted. And we'll keep closing them down. So...
The future's bright, isn't it?
The future's bright.
Well,
thanks for being there from the beginning.
You're not going anywhere, are you?
I'm not going anywhere. No, as you know, I have a 17-year-old and a 3-year-old. So that 3-year-old, he's keeping us young.
Yeah, you're living pro-life.
We're living pro-life. We're trying to do our part with the 8 kids.
Bless you for that. Yeah. Well, we feel the same about our 11 grandchildren. They're the joy of our lives. Yeah, to see those young people. But we talked about this earlier, Sean. We do have serious concerns about the country they're going to grow up in. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that the families are breaking down. The family's under attack. Mm-hmm. And the other things you're seeing across the country, it's pretty startling how rapidly we're declining. I've been doing some research lately on America during World War II, and it was just so refreshing to see a united country, a country where those core values still were there, where families were intact, where children were getting wholesome educations. Mm-hmm. The country believed in something, and we had unity.
We had unity, but even if you skip ahead and you go into kind of where we start embracing paganism, we were unified at 9/11.
Yeah.
I mean,
not for long.
Not for long.
Yeah, but Meredith made that point, and she's wise. She said one of the only possibly positive thing about 9/11 was it would unite the American people. Mm-hmm. But how many months was it that they were already started the bickering and the partisan sniping?
It was Clinton's fault. It was W's fault.
Yeah, it didn't last very long.
It was 6 months.
And look where we are now. Has our country ever been more divided? Has the debate ever been more acrimonious, uglier, nasty, personal?
I think, too, and this ties into certainly abortion and the work of the pro-life movement, the divisiveness is different because we no longer agree on natural law. So once you strip the unborn person of their dignity, you dehumanize them.
Yes.
Then you can reinvent yourself. You can deny your gender. You can do whatever you want. You can justify any kind of sexual deviance. You can just make your own way. That's the difference, even from 20 years ago. Obama was against gay marriage, when he ran for president. So people forget about this stuff. This is rapid. When you say rapid, it's rapid.
It
but
is rapid.
The idea, which all this is an attack on women, this gender nonsense, where we're misdiagnosing mental illness, is what John Hopkins said. It's so awful. And we didn't disagree on, if you walked in here today and said, I'm a woman, I would have laughed at you. And certainly that would have been 20 years ago. But now you can get sued for that. And that's a different playing field. I mean, that's actually unbelievable.
It's so unbelievable that it's just ludicrous, isn't it?
It's absurd.
It is, because they're defying common sense and science and nature.
You can now identify as Mickey Mantle. Your childhood dream.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So maybe you can be Babe Ruth, you can be Mickey Mantle, you can be whoever you want.
I saw an article, I read an article this morning from Associated Press, which is not our friend. Mm-hmm. And like all the media, unfortunately, virtually all the media. And it was a story about this terrible disaster in Nashville, mm-hmm. where that woman walked in and killed 6 people, including 3 children.
Yeah.
And the article was fairly long, and the author of that article went to great pains never to use a pronoun.
Yeah.
Everything was her name or the shooter,
Yeah.
and they used their when it should have been
Right.
a singular pronoun.
Right.
They did everything they could to categorize that person as either male or female.
Yeah. And
It just read. Any editor would say this is ridiculous.
but that school shooting, which is awful, like all school shootings, is unlike any other one we've had because it's the Christian's fault for making the trans person feel outcast. And now we have this like sympathetic victim. There was a little bit of that garbage with the Boston Marathon bombers. Everybody fell in love with those two kids. And this is different. This is like, well, of course they would do this because of the way society is. Like we earned it. And that's dangerous.
And this poor transgender person was being oppressed by society and was angry, and they find an awful lot of politically correct explanations for everything now.
Yeah, and it's I do on that note as we close out, I do think that we're winning on the pro-life side. I think there's we're running out of steam with the wokeness. I think there's a pretty big anti-woke movement out there. You certainly see like Ron DeSantis, who just never had any of it. But it's becoming more acceptable to be like, we're not doing all this garbage.
2024 is a turning point for our country.
Yeah.
There are two directions we can go. And we have to pray that we go in the right direction.
Yeah. In 2020,
because the consequences of losing in 2024 may be irreversible.
Well, it's a clean slate. There's no COVID. There's none of that stuff. Everybody should be thinking more clearly, hopefully, than they were in 2020. And it's going to be dire. I also think the anger at the overturning of Roe will have kind of started to fade. They'll try to regarnish some of that, but I don't think it's going to be very successful. And so,
well, the media certainly wanted to make that a major factor for the loss. That women just turned against the Republicans because of that overturning of Roe v. Wade. They made some of that, but it obviously had to be a media creation also because it fit the narrative.
Yeah, and you had Abbott, you had Governor Abbott where we are, DeSantis, Kemp. You had all these powerful, bold, pro-life landslides, all of them, all of them. So I think poor politicians was the reason for that. I think they're overestimating the Roe stuff, and
you think there were some bad candidates out there?
I don't know. Possibly. It's happened before. Oh, horrible candidates. Yeah. Horrible candidates. Yeah. And that is
it's a shame because that election was ours to win.
Of course, but also the pool of people that are willing to go into this toxic arena is getting smaller. You're getting the wrong, and people just aren't willing to do it. People that were angry at Trump even for running, I think Trump represented, well, I'll run, I can fix it, and I'll be a jerk and I'll curse everybody, but I know what I'm doing and I can fix it. In a lot of ways he did. But if people were angry, the white picket fence America that you described is gone, unfortunately. And there's no way Donald Trump's getting elected after World War II. But that, one of the things that I hope Trump did, I think he did do, and it is healthy, is you can run for something and you can be yourself and you don't have to walk on eggshells. Now, he did it to the extreme by insulting everybody all the time, but it kind of relaxes people that, I can make a mistake, I can misspeak, or I can tell somebody, no, that's not a good idea, and you're an idiot. And that's healthy in a democracy. We've gotten so politically correct we can't even use he or she, So hopefully that continues. And we just thank you for all your service. Thank you for your role in 40 Days for Life.
Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being such a powerful, powerful force for our movement.
We'll keep going.
Yeah, you can't go away.
I'm not going to go away. We're not going anywhere. So.
Yeah, I remember the early days, and it's just it's mind-boggling.
It is. It really is.
How far you've come, you personally, but also the movement.
Well, we don't think about it a lot because we're so busy. But then you run it. I was telling somebody earlier about Emil Ogden. You know, when you talk about how this place started,
there are a lot of heroes.
There's a lot of heroes.
A lot of unknown heroes.
A lot of unknown heroes.
And we're sitting here in this building right now.
Yeah.
Which was the impetus for even starting the Coalition for Life, as it was called originally, and then it evolved into the 40 Days for Life.
They wouldn't have let you and I come in here in 2007 and record a podcast. I assure you of that. We'd have gone to prison. But we'd have been.
We were out front.
That's right. We were out front. If we'd have knocked on the door and said we want to go to the back room and record a podcast, that wouldn't have happened. Yeah. So
you couldn't have scripted this. People wouldn't believe it. That the 40 Days for Life headquarters would be on that location.
And if it can happen here, it can happen where you live. And that's the message. And so many people believe, you know, that it is the work of the Holy Spirit on a global level with 40 Days for Life. But at the local level, you know, when you recruit a volunteer, you never know what can happen. Yeah. So, well, I'm glad you weren't a small town lawyer. I'm glad I wasn't a lawyer. I was on my way to law school, as you know. So good. I think we're both better for it.
Yeah, we both found careers that gave real meaning, I think, to what we were doing. And life's too important to do it something you don't really believe in. And so we found that. You found your calling, I found mine. I call my students who feel that infected. They've got that bug.
Yeah.
And I tell them, you know, if you feel that call, if you have that bug, if you are infected, don't fight it, because it's terminal.
Yeah.
And if you don't end up serving something you believe in, as you did, and as I believe I did, that bug's going to nag at you.
Well, there was a time when I thought, you know, I've put in, this is great, everything's going well, but if I'm going to, whatever age I was, 30, if I'm going to leave, like this is the time to do it. I've got little kids, I could start another career. And I remember thinking, let me put myself in that position. And the scenario I put myself in is that I'm driving to my other job and I hear a Planned Parenthood ad on the radio, and it drives me crazy. And I'm like, can't do it.
It's too late.
I never thought about it since.
It's too late.
That was it.
Yeah.
I was like, I would not be able, I wouldn't make it.
You're infected.
I'm infected. I'm infected. So
you have that
good.
bug.
Yeah, it's so true.
And if you don't end up serving something, I've got nothing against corporate America, but I could never have been happy there. Because I have a need to serve something I believe in. And so do you, Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah. We would not be complete. We would not be fulfilled if we weren't serving something we believed in. And what a beautiful thing you're serving.
Well, it's an honor to get to do it. And I don't think I wouldn't be able to do it without my wife, and I wouldn't be able to do it without my faith. And you mentioned that in your time as a spy, certainly. But you just can't do it. I remember Meredith, your wonderful bride, saying to me one time, I don't know what you do without God. Like, I don't know how you get through life. Life's intolerable.
Yeah.
I don't know what people do.
Right.
And it's so true. And there's no greater life. There's no harder life than picking up our cross and following Jesus Christ. That is the most challenging thing we can possibly do, but it is worth it every step of the way. And so
beautifully said. Thank you.
There we go. All right. If you're watching this one first and you ignored my opening comments, please do go back and watch our first of this 2-part series with Jim Olson, the founding board chair of 40 Days for Life. Please rate, review, share this podcast, leave your comments on the page, and we will see you next time. God bless you.